I want to do a quick video on how to find datasets to use in your training systems. This could be both like if you want to explore ML and AI yourself, but also maybe it's a clear indication that we need better tools and better websites and better user experiences to actually find these datasets. So I'll go through 3 sites, 2 which you already know about, and then a third that I think is really fantastic for datasets. So first off, let's start with HuggingFace. HuggingFace is great at finding datasets. Like all the other tools, if you click on the Datasets tab, you'll then see over here there are a number of tasks being used. So let's say one of the things I've been trying to figure out to do is like, can I get like a line of poetry, or can I get an actual like the title of a poem and be able to classify that by maybe who the writer is, or maybe like the category. So I want to look around and see what I could find in terms of already existing data sets. So in that case, maybe what I would want to look for is something like text classification. And if I click on this, you'll see it sort of like sorts all my data sets here, and there's only 2,308 now that are in text classification. I can also look for poetry, and it looks like there is nothing. So maybe poems, poem sentiment, and Turkish poems. That's interesting. Let's take a look at let's take a look at both these actually. So poem sentiment appears to be verse text. So essentially, if you look up a single verse in a poem, how positive or negative or mixed is that? And that is why the lonesome day is a negative, I guess, because of lonesome. So not exactly what I was looking for, but there is some interesting data here. No impact, I guess, is sort of like if there's no clear way to define the sentiment of this poem. Something interesting there. Let's take a look at the Turkish poems. Here we see this is all Turkish. There is a title, and then there is a poet, and then there is, I believe, the poem itself. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, so there's the poem itself. So this is kind of interesting. I don't speak Turkish. I don't know that I would be able to use this in Turkish, but if anyone is Turkish or wants to do something like this looks like pretty good data. How many rows are there? There's almost 5,000 rows. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of data, or a fair enough amount of data. So maybe you could begin to take something like this. It looks like it was scraped from whatever this website is. So interesting. Again, not exactly what I want, but this is kind of shows you the power of Hugging Face because all these data sets are public. You could go in and see if there's anything that already exists for you. So if you want to begin to set up just sort of a quick test for yourself without using maybe user data or customer data, and you can just play with that. So that's Hugging Face. Let's take a look next at Papers with Code. All right, so we've previously looked at Papers with Code, again, to sort of maybe find the trending, like, best model for whatever task we're looking for. But we can also look at this for datasets. So if we come over here and we click on datasets, you'll see here there is a filter by modality, which is the type of data. There's filter by task, and then there's filter by language. So let's go ahead and do this again. Let's do text classification. And let's search for datasets. Let's look for poetry. And here we see some datasets, 5. So there is blackout poetry dataset. Looks like it's let's see, what is this even used for? Chinese classical poetry matching, metaphorical connections, interesting. Tag corpus, don't know what that is. And then harmful QA, which again, I don't know what any of these are. So again, maybe if I spoke Chinese, this one might be a little bit more helpful. Let's see, so BLP. So a blackout poetry dataset constructed from publicly available short stories and large poems. The dataset consists of 2 variants, 8K and 16K examples of passages along with poem generated from the passage, and the indices of the words in the passage from which the poem have been selected. This dataset was constructed synthetically and hence contains multiple poor poems and frequent grammatical errors. However, it is a great starting point for the task of applying machine learning to blackout poetry generation. I don't even know what you would use this for, but this is fascinating. Maybe what words you would black out to generate poetry, or maybe the inverse of, like, if something is blacked out, you would invert it and undo it. Again, maybe this is more like, hey, I just need to find something that maybe I can play with. So interesting. Let's look at the CCPM data set. Can be used for poetry matching, understanding, and translation. The main task of this data set is, given a description in modern Chinese, The model is supposed to select one line of Chinese classical poetry from 4 candidates that semantically match the given description most. So I guess this is like if you were to give like a phrase, it would actually match it with poetry, which is kind of interesting. Again, not maybe what I'm looking for here, but a fascinating data set that if you speak Chinese is probably very interesting and potentially useful. So that's pillars of code. Again, the number of data sets seems to vary quite a lot between each tool. I think a lot of researchers upload their data sets to whatever they use and probably nothing else. So let's take a look at one last data set tool, which is Kaggle. Okay, so let's take a look at Kaggle. So Kaggle traditionally is known as a place where people who are interested in machine learning research or interested in writing machine learning code can sign up to compete in competitions. These competitions are often like a company wants to solve something using machine learning, but they don't have their own research analysts. So what they'll do is they'll often upload their data set and set up a bounty. So basically like we'll pay $10,000 to the person who creates the best model that solves this problem for us. And what's interesting about that is that means like there's a lot of good data sets to get uploaded. Some of them are public, some of them are not. But there's lots of interesting data that people put up to create sort of like these competitions. So if you come to Kaggle, you don't usually need to create an account to sign in, I guess, unless there's like private data sets or data sets you need like some sort of, you need to sign some approval. I generally am not signed in. I do have an account, but I just go through data sets. So if we come here and we go to data sets, same thing as most sites. It's like they've got different categories here. They've got tasks along the top. There's some really interesting categories here. If you want travel data that exists here, food, software, health, sports, trending data sets. So trending might be stuff that is currently used in a competition, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go to classification. And we'll see here there is an apple quality classifier. So I guess if apple's rotten or not. You could see that a lot in like machine learning tools, like computer vision. Like maybe you are working at an Apple company and you want to see if your apples coming through are, rotten or not, and then you would have some machine that would sort them in and out. Housing markets, ton of housing markets data sets. Gender by name, that's an interesting one. Okay, so I'm not necessarily seeing exactly what I want here, but let's go ahead and just search for poetry. And actually, let's remove classifier. Let's just go all the way to the beginning. So poetry foundation poems, poems from poetryfoundation.org. I wonder how different these two are. This one looks much, much larger than this one, just based on the size. Arabic poetry, Bengali poetry, Hindi poetry. Here's our blackout poetry data set. Again, so sometimes people upload these to multiple sites. Spanish poetry, complete poetryfoundation.org data set. Maybe there's just a competition to just straight up like, how can we get all the data from the Poetry Foundation? Okay, so I'm going to try this one. It does look like it's the largest, and just take a look at what's in it. So what are people saying about this? This data set contains most poems available on poetryfoundation.org. So what it looks like I have here is an author, a title. I don't know what this category is. What is this? Let me just extend this. Or look at the compact view. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Maybe the ID? It's probably the ID of the poem on the website. And then the content. So this looks like almost exactly what I want, right? I want to be able to guess from a poem title who the author might be. So this would be pretty helpful, and it looks like there's a fair enough... How many rows are in this? It doesn't tell me exactly how many rows are in here. I guess I could sort by descending. So it looks like there are 15,000 entries here, a little bit, almost 16,000. So again, this seems like a good amount of data. If I want to download this, I can come over here and hit download. And then it will ask me to sign in. So I'll sign in with an account. I think I just have a Google account here with Kaggle. Let's see. That works. Okay. So I can go ahead and download this. Let's call it Complete Poetry and download this from here. And then when I open this, I should have like a CSV file. Yep, I do. So I quickly open this. That's not going to open at all in that application. The problem with a lot of these data sets is they're really, really large, and therefore they're really hard to open in certain tools. I don't have Excel on this computer, which sounds like I'm not a very good data analyst, but I do have numbers, so I'll open this in numbers, and I can see, sure enough, a lot of different categories. So what I'll do is in my video where I'm going to actually train a text classifier, I will go ahead and convert this document into the right format for that particular tool. So we'll take a look at that video in a couple videos. And then, but yeah, I think Kaggle is an awesome place to grab data sets from. And it tends to have some really unique and interesting ones. So if you're interested in trying to find some stuff, there is a lot here. And it's also helpful to sort of see how they're formatted. They're not always formatted correctly for the model you're going to work with. So sometimes you do have to figure out how to massage it into the right like pattern and that sort of thing. So we'll take a look at that as we work through this process.